watching The Warmup, presented by your local North Texas GEICO agents. It's time to get warmed up for week 4 of Texas high school football. It's a bye week for a majority of DFW teams, but there's still some good games on the schedule this week. One that should be a must-see game is Rockwall hosting Arlington Martin. The Warriors had their bye week last week, so they're well rested and they'll need to be as they take on the high-powered Yellow Jackets. Rockwall has scored over 50 points in their first 3 games, losing only to Highland Park in week 1. Sophomore quarterback Braden Locke has stepped into the starting role with guns a-blazing. Through 3 games, he already has over 1,200 yards passing, 13 touchdowns, and only 1 pick. But he hasn't faced a defense quite like Martin. The Warriors shut down Lake Travis on the road in week 1, and along with their special teams, they accounted for all the scoring in a win versus Hebron. Rockwall will score points in this one, that's for sure. But the key for Martin will be to try and contain Jacket receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba and not let him have a 100-yard, 2-touchdown type game. Arlington High also had a bye last week, but they take their 2-0 record into Hanby Stadium to face Mesquite Horn. The Colts have taken off right where they left off last year, but instead of Jahari Rogers playing quarterback, this year he's at defensive back. New quarterback Chris Sims has thrown 7 touchdowns and only 1 pick in 2 games. Meanwhile, Horn is coming off a couple of tough losses to powerhouses Highland Park and Cedar Hill. Look for the Jags to keep it close for a half, but for Arlington to pull away in the second half. A big show coming up this week on Wingstop Inside High School Sports. Our inside story focuses on Geyer running back Kedrick Cobbs and how not only is he killing it on the gridiron, but in the classroom too. Cobbs ranks number 1 in his class academically and has a love for math and science like no other. Also, we'll be giving out another bobblehead this weekend, and we have a lot of good candidates to choose from. Speaking of good candidates, let's take a look at who could be in the running for next week's MVP. If anyone is going to find open holes in the Martin defense, it would be Jackson Smith-Njigba of Rockwall. He already has 25 catches for 587 yards and 8 touchdowns. He could have a big one in our game of the week. How about Trinity Christian Cedar Hill quarterback Shadur Sanders? Deion's son is the main cog that runs the Tigers machine, as he's thrown for over 500 yards and 6 scores this year. And how about McKinney North QB Dylan Markowitz? Only 3 weeks in, and he has 1,200 yards passing and 12 touchdowns with no interceptions. Markowitz and the Bulldogs take on Rockwall Heath Thursday night, so he could have a stellar game. Fort Worth All Saints has a big game this Friday against Parish Episcopal. Unfortunately, their stud offensive tackle, Tommy Brockermyer, will not be playing due to a shoulder injury. Since Brockermeyer, the nation's 5th best recruit for the 2021 class, has time on his hands, we hit him up with some rapid-fire questions to get to know him better.
What is your nickname?
My nickname's Tommy, I guess,
Right.
because my actual name's Thomas, so people call me Tommy.
What's your go-to snack?
My go-to snack is probably, I like Cheez-Its a lot, so I eat those a lot.
What is your favorite movie?
My favorite movie is The Dark Knight.
If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Superpower, oh my gosh. I'd probably fly. Be able to fly, that'd be awesome.
What emoji do you use the most?
The gorilla emoji.
Who is your sports idol?
My dad. My dad's probably my sports idol.
What is your favorite color?
My favorite color is blue.
If you could be on any TV show, what would it be?
The Office.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
I gotta ask what character you'd be, or at least like to sit next to.
I'd love to sit next to Dwight. That'd be really fun.
Tommy is a good sport, and he will be on the sidelines this Friday cheering on his twin brother James, who is also on the O-line for the Saints. Now let's take a look at our rankings for this week. In 6A, Duncanville solidified their spot at number 1 by beating national power St. John's Prep out of DC, 35-14. We have a new number 2, it's Denton Guyer, after they blasted North Crawley. They head into their bye week undefeated. Allen drops to 3 because of a lackluster performance against Coppell. The Eagles, playing without Raylan Sharp, were dangerously close to losing their first ever game at Eagle Stadium, but pulled it out 28-21. South Lake Carroll is still cruising along as they spanked Odessa Permian last week. Their road game against Guyer in a couple of weeks will be a classic. And finally, DeSoto rounds out the top 5. They manhandled Bishop Dunn last Saturday. Biggest change this week comes out of 5A. Frisco Lone Star jumps 3 places to that number 1 spot as they went into Highland Park and pulled off the upset. Denton Ryan remains at 2 after a bye week, and the Scots of Highland Park dropped to 3. Chandler Morris had his first bad game as the Scots quarterback, as he threw for 4 picks against Lone Star. Coming in at 4 is Aledo. They started district play with a dominating win over Burleson Centennial. And finally, at 5 is the Colony. They almost dropped out of the rankings, but Mikey Harrington threw a touchdown with 1 second left to beat Byron Nelson last week. We're not done yet. It's time for the extra point. We're going to start off the extra point with the biggest win of the weekend. Lone Star took down our former number 1 school, Highland Park, in the biggest upset of 2019. And the students were also feeling the hype of this big win. Did I mention it was at Highlander Stadium? A sad thing for us here at Inside High School Sports. Our dear friend Rusty Siegler announced he will not be on any sidelines this coming season as he's retiring from the game of basketball. Coach Siegler had 662 wins in his 35 seasons as a head coach and had 181 wins in his 9 years at Little Elm. He'll be missed by us this season and all to come. That's all we have for this week's episode. To follow all things Inside High School Sports, follow all of our social media accounts. We have Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. That'll keep you in the loop on everything going on around the Metroplex. Until the best 30 minutes of your sports weekend comes on Saturday at 6:30 p.m. on NBC5. That's Wingstop Inside High School Sports, hosted by Pat Doney. It's time for the action on the gridiron. I am Ashley Bullington, and thank you for watching The Warmup, presented by your local North Texas GEICO agents. To find the office nearest you, go to geico.com/DFW. I hope you're warmed up and ready for week 4 of Texas high school football.